I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever
Our call to worship. Fear not, I am the first and the last, and the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. We're a pretty boring family. And then there was Susan, as you well know. So, there will be an opportunity later, I hope, that you will share some of your memories of Susan. I'm sure there will be some good stories that you remember. The music is being supplied by cousin Libby. I don't know why you're so far away. I'm Joe. I'm here pretending to be a preacher here. And cousin John is going to deliver the May eulogy. So this very much is a homegrown, do-it-yourself memorial service. So you were here.
I've been designated as a Foote family historian because my mother seemed to keep up with all the issues with the Footes. And when I talk to people like Joe and Jack, they said, we didn't know all that, okay? So to understand Susan, I think it's appropriate to kind of trace back a little bit about where Susan came from with the Footes and also in Durant, okay? So our grandmother and grandfather, J.T. and Mary Bell Foote, moved to Oklahoma shortly after the land rush. And J.T. and Mary Bell had 6 children. Robert Junius Foote, Susan's father. Joe Jackson. The Foote house was built by J.T. Foote in the mid-20s after the birth of all the Foote children. Because J.T. Foote developed what was known as Sunset Heights in Durant. A street was named Foote Street. And the Foote house was on the corner of Foote and Main. And the title of my talk is called Foote and Main, USA. Susan always featured the fact that she was from Main Street, USA. Since Susan lived so close, she spent most all of her time daily with Mother. When we were visiting, she wanted to be with us all the time. And she and Mary Jane were constant companions. There were a few times, though, when maybe there was a disagreement between these two children. And when that happened, Susan was very sensitive. And she would run down to her house, and you wouldn't hear anything until she got there, and then it was an explosion. You heard all over town, okay? Because she was all upset about what was going on. And so we referred to that as running down the path between the Foote house and Bob's house on Foote Street, okay? Before Susan Foote had a driver's license, she always had a name for a car. And the earliest car, it was a Nash, and she called it the Blue Goose, okay? Because it kind of looked like a crazy thing. And she would drive it up and down Foote Street with no driver's license, okay? And so then, like I said, she had a name for everything. And then later, when she did have a driver's license, she was driving a 1950s version pink Cadillac that she called the Pink Panther. Okay. And then later, by Foote, her father had an Oldsmobile, and she called it Brown Rattler because it was rattling all the time. Okay. Anyway, my earliest trips to Durant were when Mary Bell was alive and living in the Foote house, and Susan lived next door. And she practically lived, just like my mother said, she just practically lived in the house, and there was created this path down to Bob Hannibale's house when she got upset. Okay, so all of us grew up in the 50s during the period of Elvis and rock and roll and American Bandstand. And in those years, people had black and white TVs, and when we went up there was a black and white TV at the Foote house, and she would always tune into American Bandstand because she was into all that, and it was great. And then she had all these 45 rock and roll records, and she could really do the jitterbug, big time, okay? Now, once Susan had her driver's license, and we went up there, she would always take us over to the Sonic Drive-In, just like Happy Days and all this stuff. And so, like I said, this was like USA Susan, okay? Now, and before that, my sister Mary Jane had graduated from college in 1967. So a lot of things happened in 1967. And I graduated from high school in 67. And Susan got a job at Blue Cross in Dallas in 1967 and moved in with us in Dallas at my house, okay? And what happened was later, Mary Jane and Susan just got closer. They were sharing the same bedroom and all that stuff, okay? And so then Susan was older, so she was of legal age to go to these places where they had alcohol, but I wasn't. Okay, so one time she said, let's go to this place on Greenville Avenue. If you know where Greenville Avenue is in Dallas, at least in those days, they would have these places kind of like roadhouses and stuff like that. And you could drink beer and dance and all that stuff. So we went over there, we told my mother we went to the Bible, the movie. But she got me in there, and so that's the kind of relationship. That's Susan. That's kind of happening. We had a really strong bond with all this stuff. Okay.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you putting all that effort into tying the Foote history in with Susan's life. As you were speaking, I was thinking about a sign our daughter had in her home when you walked in the door, and it said, "That's a terrible idea. What time do we leave?" And every time I read that, I thought of Susan. She was up for any challenge, any opportunity, any good time. And I think that spark of life extended all the way to the end for Susan. Now, a lot of friends here. We've got family, we've got children, grandchildren, a couple of other cousins. We have friends. Now is your time to stand up and say a word about Susan.
That's true. So we're driving to Sam's, and we're starting to pull into it before they redid it, and for some reason, Grandma's car died. Like, it just turned off in the middle of us trying to turn. She's freaking out, trying to turn it on, gets on. In the process, she had hit the volume, and then Elvis is just blaring. And she's freaking out and screaming and doing her hands like she normally does. And so we get in there, and we do our shopping, and Gage is about to graduate. And he's really into hot sauce, so my grandma got him this big bottle of hot sauce that's in a box. She's gonna go put that on the counter. The box, the bottom of it opens up, the Tabasco falls out, it breaks, it goes everywhere. And then I'm just standing there, I'm like, I'm in flip-flops, no! So we're trying to get it all cleaned up and stuff, and at this time they had the little upside-down umbrellas that you could throw change into it for donations. Well, somebody's gone by with a big tower of boxes, and it hits that just right, and the worker just goes, oh my God, it's raining pennies from heaven. And that is one of the most memorable trips, because everywhere we went, something went wrong, but at least was entertaining and it made a good memory. what, with Grandma, as she got older, she decided she was going to start driving the scooters around. That was always a bad decision, because no matter what, she'd always hit at least one end cap and take something out. So with that need for speed, it even went in with those little scooters, and everyone had to get out of her way. We would warn them, and everyone would just be, oh, no, she's fine. And we're like, no, you need to move. She's going to hit you. But she will always be in our memories. She will always be a strong soul. She was a spitfire up until the end. Anyone?
Susan might have just gotten her driver's license. It's possible, but I didn't have mine when I was learning to drive. With my dad, who had come back from the service, I got my driver's license in 1960 from my dad, who taught me how to do the gear shift and all on the car. And he was a veteran of World War II and didn't have much patience, but he taught me how to drive. But this was before that happened. I had not really learned how to drive. And Susan took me over Main Street with the Blue Goose, and when we got near the railroad tracks, she said, well, you can drive. We're off of Main Street, so you can drive now. So she taught me into getting into the car and driving, and I stalled I couldn't get the gear shift changed. I was 14, I couldn't get the gear shift changed, and we were on the railroad track. So the rest is history. I'm still here. And she came back. And the other story I have about the path is with Miss Lena. I was not present at the time, but I heard the story that my grandmother always had a lady that sold material to make clothing with, and she sat down in a rocking chair. It was hot like today, and Susan was looking in through the window in the Foote house to see Miss Lena and our grandmother talking. And Miss Lena was in a rocking chair, and my grandmother was sitting there. And Miss Lena was taking out her material, and Susan got to be impatient about it because she was so hot out there, and she wanted Miss Lena to leave. So the window was open, and Susan took the hose and sprayed Miss Lena. So she abruptly left. But when she found out that she was seen at the window, she ran as fast as she could go down the path.
But Susan, I met her about 7 years ago at Christmas. Found her at Jim's house, and me and Jeff bring her Arby's whenever she was sick. You know, during the week, and the only thing she wanted was an Arby's sandwich. You know, we watched Little House on the Prairie. You know, and we enjoyed time with her, and she was feisty. You know, she always had something smart to say. And all the stories I heard from everybody here, I think Jeff's a lot like her. Thank you.
Her love for her parents was unbelievable. She would have done anything for them, and also for John's mother and daddy. She was so devoted to them. It was such it was really inspiring to see how she loved them so much, and she did so much for them. And what I have to say is that she instilled that into Francine, and Francine instilled it into Megan and Gage. And I'm just so thankful for her. They did such a beautiful job of taking care of their mother. I mean, nobody could have done any better for their parents. And I just wanted to say that you know, Susan instilled all those good qualities into her family, and so she's still here.
Yeah. Amen.
A beautiful friend, and she had the most beautiful heart. And I met her, I was working at a jewelry kiosk at the casino. My late husband had passed away. And my children knew Bob and Susan because their dad had taken them to the marina, and they would go to the lake together. And they had talked to me about Bob and Susan Morrison, but I'd never met her personally. I mean, I'd heard of them, but I didn't know them personally. But as it happened, I was working at a jewelry kiosk, and one one evening, I looked over there and Susan was working in the gift shop at the casino. And I recognized who she was. I went over just to introduce myself to her. And we just became fast friends after that. I mean, she just had the most warm, loving heart. And she knew I was a widow. And that summer, she just really gave me a lifeline. Because when you lose your spouse, you're so lonely after that. And Susan and Bob just took me in and they'd have pool parties and stuff with other friends. And we just had the best time. And our friendship just grew from that because she was always such a wonderful, beautiful person. Like Megan said, you didn't want to go to Target with her, with motorized. You didn't want to get in front of her at all. I experienced that myself. And even one time when Bob was in the hospital, Susan and I were, I think we'd gone to Sherman for something, and she got a call that Bob had a stroke. And anyway, we went to the house and got in her car. And she drove like 200 miles an hour over there to Sherman. Scared me to death, but she was gonna get there to be with Bob, you know. And everything they said is so true. Susan was she just had the biggest heart and was such a hostess. I mean, she really had that Southern charm, you know. And every time, if I invited her and Bob over to eat a meal or whatever, she would always bring a gift. You know, she'd bring something to drink or some flowers. She's just so thoughtful, you know, and I'll cherish her forever. She's a wonderful friend, a very loving person, and I'll miss her. And it's right, Fred, Hill, and Megan, they were just right there for her. They, you know, they took such good care of her, and it does speak volumes about the mother and grandmother that she was. She loved her family, loved her friends, and she was very social. She loved people. And I'm just thankful that I got to know her and become wonderful friends with her. Thank you.
What a beautiful tribute. Thank you. Well, we'll ask Cousin Libby to fire up the piano again, and we're going to try to sing a hymn. Our Old Testament reading is from Ecclesiastes chapter 3. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. There is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. That is a gift from God.